Good evening, folks. This is Smokin Joe with the Cracker Culture Podcast, the podcast for real Floridians. I'm joined with Denise Nystrom, who is running for District 6 of Lee County School Board. One of the things I'd like to ask Denise is to explain to us, what does District 6 encompass? A lot of folks that when we watch the school board meetings and stuff, we don't really understand District 6. We know what District 1, 2, 3, we know what they encompass. What does the district, your District 6 that you're running for, what all does that encompass?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm absolutely thrilled to be sitting here next to you. It's my pleasure to be here, Denise Nystrom. The Lee County School Board is made up of 7 members, but the county is actually divided into 5 districts. So if you are running for District 6 and 7, those are actually considered at-large seats, and everybody in the entire county votes for them. So for example, if you live in District 1, you're going to vote for District 1. You'll also vote for District 6 because it's a position that is the entire county. So once again, there are 5 districts, but there are 7 positions, and I'm running for the at-large position, District 6.
Now, I watched the interview you done the other day, and you had spoke about the candidate you're running against, who's running against you, and I respect the fact that you spoke highly of her. What makes you feel like that you are a better candidate for District 6 than your opponent?
Okay, so, well, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm a mom of 3. I'm a grandmother of 8. I was a special education teacher for 13 years. Then I became a special education administrator, which means that I ran school districts. And then I became an assistant superintendent of schools. And basically that means that I ran school districts with the superintendent. And I worked directly for the Board of Education. And I was a school district administrator for 13 years. So I understand things like Florida state statutes, board policies, how to navigate politically within the framework of a school district. And while I think my opponent is a very nice girl, comes from a very nice family, she's Christian, as am I just believe that I can hit the ground running. And I really feel that this country is in crisis. I think we all knew that the country was in crisis. We were seeing glimmers of that. But then after the 2020 election, we realized just how much in crisis we really were. So at that time, I started attending all of the school board meetings. So I've been doing that for about a year now. I've been actively engaging community members through my website and my newsletter. And I really feel that it is my duty to this country, to my children, to their children, to everybody's posterity, to get on that school board and straighten some things out for all of the families in Lee County.
And I have to say, I applaud the efforts. I have watched you, I've watched Christy Diavagelli, I've watched Tara Jenner. You ladies have showed up and have really fought a hard fight to try to get the right things across, and even trying to point out some of the inconsistencies in the current board. I'm a product of the Lee County School Board system, and when you talk about being an ESE teacher and things like that, I remember some of my friends were in ESE classes. Those were the ones that they just kind of pushed off to the side to keep them away from the other children, which I've always thought was wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like they got the same education that I received. I don't feel like they got the same attention, which I feel like those ESE students are the ones that require more attention because they're having, what would they used to call them, slow learners. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I do think that your qualifications are outstanding, and I just don't understand why we can't get a board to work together. And how do you feel about the fact that the board that we currently have, it seems like most of them go along to get along. I don't know, do you feel like that you can help to bring a board the board together so that we can work for a common goal for the betterment of our community?
Okay, so I think there are a couple of things that you brought up there, and I'm going to try to remember them and address them all. I think that people have to be on the board for the right reason. And the right reason, the predominant reason, is the education of children. And that begins as early as preschool and runs right through grade 12, with the ultimate goal of transitioning every single child from graduation into a skill-oriented job, into the military, into a vocational school, or into some form of higher education so that they become contributors to society. And my concern about the Board of Education currently is that maybe some of the people that are on the board are not on there for altruistic reasons. I don't want to criticize them, but when you attend as many board meetings as I do, and I often find myself there from 9 to 12 hours a day, because if you know anything about that board, if they have a workshop meeting followed by a briefing followed by an action meeting, that's a 12-hour day for me.
Right.
And I've seen any number of things. You mentioned one of them, the special education department. I've had many parents reach out to me that were frustrated, that felt like they weren't getting the services for their children that they needed. I come from a paradigm where children did receive the services that they needed. That's a program that I would definitely want to take a look at. I would also want to take a look at the English as a Second Language program for the very same reason. But really, I want to look at schools across the district overall and do some type of in-depth forensic analysis. So for example, you take all of the elementary schools, all of the middle schools, all of the high schools, and you look at specifically what programs they have in those schools. Are those programs effective? Are there children that have better programs than other children, and in certain schools those programs need to be brought in? Are there children that need something more and for some reason they're not getting it? And then another component of that is you have to also look at the facilities. So for example, you want to make sure that all kids have access to enrichment programs and things like art and music. You want to make sure that that they all have science labs that are adequate so that they can be learning science adequately. You want to make sure that the auditoriums have state-of-the-art media. You want to make sure that all of the schools have libraries. I have heard that not all of the schools actually have libraries. In my estimation, you should never have a district where one school would have a library and other schools do not. The other thing is, because of my background, I actually have done some in-depth studying of some of the schools in the district. There are a lot of schools. I don't want to say that I have researched all 119 schools, but I have taken a look at the achievement scores in certain areas in comparison to others. I have also taken a look at the incident rates in those schools. So for example, an incident rate, because you are required to report it, has to be recorded. So for example, an incident could be something like I've called you a name, so I've bullied you. An incident could be something like, I actually hit you, so therefore I physically put my hands on you. An incident could really be could be right up to murder. And I've taken a look at the incident rates of some of the schools, and some of the schools have very high incident rates. And when you have schools that don't have high incident rates and you're comparing them to schools that do, and then you also see that the schools that don't have high incident rates have high achievement rates compared to the other schools, you really need to drill down and find out why that is occurring, and you need to do something to change that, to close the gap, to give all kids, an appropriate education.
That I totally agree 100%. You're talking about the high incident rates in certain schools versus other schools, and one thing that bothers me, I think, more than anything, is that a number of the schools where you do have the high incident rates, the parents aren't aware even of who their school board district member is. They're clueless. And you got to look, not everybody can spend the time like you're able to spend. And look, I've watched you. I know you're doing it. You wear me out. I mean, watching you.
Thank you.
But not every parent. Most of the parents, and when you come from, there's a lot of single parent homes where they ain't got time, and they got to hope that the best is happening for their children, whether it is or not. And I think that we need to be more focused on the district members being more involved with the community and the parents, let alone the infighting that we see on the current board.
Correct. I would agree with that. And I was asked a question recently about parents or parents' lack of involvement, and I said, I really don't even like the way that a question like that gets asked, because we don't know what the circumstances are of those parents and why possibly they are more or less involved. And as you said yourself, a lot of times you have children that come from single parent homes, or for whatever reason they're struggling financially to make ends meet. So let's put all of that aside. Yes, we need to find a way to engage parents. Of course, we always need to find a way to engage parents. But at the same time, it's incumbent upon the school district to make sure that kids have access equally across the board. There are, for example, one of the things that I've heard is that certain schools have a very hard time finding qualified administrators or qualified teachers. Maybe it's because they don't like the environment in which they're working. Well, we need to take a look at that environment and find out why things are occurring the way that they're occurring. And I'll give you an example. So you can actually compare student ratio to the number of administrators, student ratio to the number of teachers, student ratio to the number of counselors, student ratio to the number of support staff. And you can also look to see if there is a shortage in teachers. I've actually heard that there is a shortage in teachers. I've also heard that there's a shortage in administrators. They've mentioned that. Many of the school district board members have mentioned that at board meetings. So I can basically assume that that's true. And then we've got to do something to incentivize people to work in those environments so that these kids are not lacking the resources that they need in terms of the proper staffing. And here's something else. I've heard a lot of parents say to me now that the schools are just locked down. Ever since COVID, they are locked down. Parents are not welcomed in. You can't even get in through the front door. These schools need to be open. I mean, schools are, the whole idea of schools is that you're inviting the community in. You're taking care of children. The number one, children have to be safe. Number two, they have to be educated. And you have to get the parents involved in that process. So we have to open the doors of these schools, and we have to invite parents back into this process. And also, it gives them a view as to what is going on educationally with their children. I mean, one of the things when the schools closed down during the pandemic and the children were learning at home virtually, that was when a lot of parents first began to understand some of the things that they were concerned about with regard to what was being taught in the schools. So now the kids have gone back to the schools, but the parents still have the same concerns. So we've got to open our doors again, and we've got to be accountable to parents. We need to answer the questions of parents. I know I tend to talk a lot, and feel free to cut me off at any point. I guess I just, start to think about things. But, when I worked directly for the Board of Education, and I did that for 8 of the 13 years that I was an administrator, and I was the person that was sitting up at the dais with the board members, when the community would come to speak, there was no time limit. Okay, so it wasn't a thing of, well, if you have 20 people or less, you get 3 minutes to speak. It didn't work that way.
And what can you actually get across in 3 minutes? I mean, that frustrates me more than anything as a parent, and I do have a child in Lee County school system. As a parent, if I have something to say and I go to one of those meetings and 3 minutes and I'm maybe 30 seconds from finishing what I've got to say and I get cut off, that, pardon my language,
it's not warm and fuzzy, is it?
Pisses me off.
Right.
And
because what's the message behind that, right?
Well, that it don't really matter. It's just
Right.
lip service.
Right.
We're allowed to speak, but it don't matter. That's the way the common parents feel. That's why you don't see a lot of these common parents showing up at school board meetings, because I have to drive an hour at least to go to the school board meeting. Okay. If I show up there for an hour to speak and it goes, oh, well, we got more than 14 people, you can only speak 2 minutes, you can only speak 1 minute. Well, I'm going to say, hi, it's my name, I'm here, I don't agree.
You really can't say anything in 1 minute. You can barely say anything in 2 minutes. You can generally get out some type of message in 3 minutes. But in the end, the sentiment is, what's the message that they're sending? That they want to hear you, or that they don't want to hear you? That they're concerned about what you're thinking as a parent, or that they just really want to move on from public comment? And so as I was saying, my paradigm is such that we didn't tell parents how long they could speak. Now look, I understand if you have a whole room full of people that maybe you have to cut down on the speaking time, but in reality, we should be giving parents enough time to convey their concerns. The other thing is, I come from a paradigm where I wasn't a board member at this point. At this point, I was an administrator. But even as an administrator, when a parent would speak, I was expected to answer the question.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that they don't respond. That bothers me. Now, like you said, the schools are on lockdowns. However, the charter schools, they require the parents to spend so many hours inside the classroom or doing something to help out. Why is that so hard for it to be in with the rest of the public schools?
It certainly does make you wonder what's going on, doesn't it? Why would you have a charter school that would welcome you in, and why would you have a public school system that would try to tell you that maybe you're not as welcomed in? My thing is that when you work for a school district, whether you're a board member, a superintendent, an administrator, a teacher, you are working for the parents. That is what you are doing. You are also working for the community members, whether they have children in those school districts or not. You are accountable to the parents and to the community members. That is your role. It's actually a role of servitude.
I agree. And looking at as a common person, it seems to me that once these people are voted in on the board, then they become a hierarchy, and what you say don't matter. They are the end all be all, and they can do or say whatever you want, whether you like it or not. And I don't think that they should not. I don't think parents should be denied involvement in the child's education. I can tell you, as a parent, I've raised 2 kids in the Lee County school system. I've got 1 more that's in the Lee County school system, and 1 that I don't think I'd put in the Lee County school system currently that's fixing to start this coming year. I don't understand no reason why you would not welcome the assistance of parents in the classroom, any parent.
Well, unfortunately, what I really believe is that schools have become a political tool.
I agree.
And, I was a teacher and I left my politics at the door. And I was an administrator and I left my politics at the door. And in the end, the school, you should be leaving your politics at the door. You are there to educate children, not to push any kind of a political agenda. And I think somewhere along the line, that message or that direction has been lost. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to take control. That's really the reason that I'm running. I'm not a politician. I wasn't going to run to be a legislator in Tallahassee. I was not going to run to be a congressman, but I knew school districts.
Right.
And so what I could give back to my children, to your children, to our posterity, was to start getting involved in the school districts and to see what was going on. And that's really why I decided to run. I decided that someone with my skill set, that is exactly where I belonged. This past year, our Governor DeSantis, God bless him, signed a lot of things into law that were meant to protect parents. The problem is that the school district isn't adhering to those laws. And because there's no consequences, no real like you would lose your job or something of that nature, they've been able to ignore a lot of those laws, and that doesn't really that just doesn't really fly with me. I mean, I'll say it exactly that way.
And that's something that's bothered me. If my child does something at school, my child gets reprimanded, my child gets suspended, detained, expelled, or whatever. If a school board member does something, there's no consequence.
Right.
And you know, and if people can come out and when you have a majority of the public, and especially we've seen more of an influx of parents that didn't come out before, now coming out because they're seeing things. They're like, why is it okay for this particular person on the school board to do this, and my child done less than that?
That's right.
I don't agree with that. There should be some form of
accountability, culpability, responsibility.
Exactly.
Right.
Or punishment.
Right. Right. They should be able to be recalled, for example. There's no recall process. You know, so what happened was, I was fortunate enough to find a number of other people, as you mentioned, 2 people in particular, Christy DiVigelli and Tara Jenner. But I was able to find a number of people that were as passionate about school board as I was. And so, for example, we took all of DeSantis's laws and we turned them into an opt-out form for parents. So what we did is we went around to parks and pools and malls and we started talking to the parents about the things that were going on in schools. For example, boys being allowed on girls' sports teams, boys being allowed in girls' bathrooms, the school district wanting to eliminate the pronouns he and she. The school is teaching critical race theory, and I'll tell you something, I think they don't even quite understand what critical race theory is. But anyway, we gave out that letter to arm parents, to help parents protect their kids. Then in July, we actually did a reading of the English textbooks. We organized 40 community members, and these were not people that knew each other. These were just people from the community. And every single one who had been trained on what critical race theory is said that there was critical race theory in those textbooks.
Well, and you know, you mentioned the critical race theory. The opposition says if you don't understand critical race theory, you don't know what you're talking about in the first place. And that's the people that are pushing for this critical race theory to be in place. Now, take this. Most people know me. I am raw. I'm uncut. I'm unfiltered.
That's what I like about you.
I've got 2 daughters. And if I catch any school board member, they allow a boy in the bathroom with one of my daughters, you ain't gonna have to call nobody but a coroner. And I mean, you can take that how you want to.
I'm a 61-year-old woman. I don't want to be in the bathroom with a man, no offense.
My own daughters, if they have to go to the restroom and we're out in public, I will stand outside the door and let them go. I don't even go in the bathroom in public with my own daughters, because I feel like that I don't think that you should try to, and again, you're teaching children it's okay to not be normal, and I don't agree with that. I think that I understand that people have different lifestyles, they make different lifestyle choices, but they develop them over time. You can't create that, and if you start creating, well, it's okay to do this, it's okay for a boy to kiss a boy and a girl to kiss a girl. You start that at a young age, you've totally went away from any type of moralistic values that me as a Floridian feel like is our responsibility.
Well, and once again, I think that the school is taking on the role of the parent, and they're teaching morality, and it is not their role to teach morality. It goes back to the whole idea of leaving your politics at the door. So why they are taking it upon themselves? I'm just in disagreement with this. And so I wanted to actually mention something. So here's the interesting thing when we talk about critical race theory. So I was mentioning to you earlier that that I had taken a look at some of the schools in one area by comparison to another area. And now I'll be a little bit more frank about that. So I had actually taken a look at the schools that were in Estero, okay, the 3 schools that are in Estero, the Pinewoods Elementary, Three Oaks Elementary and Three Oaks Middle, and I took a look at the demographics. And this is a predominantly white area, okay?
Right.
And they were going to build $100 million school, a new school, a K-8 school. And you know, while I was attending these board meetings, I'm listening to board member Gwen Gittens, okay, who is a District 5 member up for re-election, and I am hearing her ask over and over again, please show me the numbers that prove that you need this $100 million building. So I realized that they just were not giving them to her. Now here you have a board member. The board member is supposed to be able to direct the through the superintendent, the staff in the building to supply her with the information that she needs, and they were not supplying her with that information. So once again, myself and a few others of us started sending in public records requests, and we started asking for the information, and that fell on deaf ears. And then we realized that there was a school in San Carlos that was at 70% capacity. So while they were saying that these neighboring schools in Estero were over capacity, here we have this school in San Carlos that was at 70% capacity. And that got us to thinking about school choice. And the fact that, that parents, when they move into an area, depending on if they move into that area late, that their children may not even go to the school in their area if that school is already full based on school choice. So then we wanted to know, well, how many kids based on school choice were attending those three schools in Estero? And that fell on deaf ears. So when we looked at the schools that Mrs. Gittens was referring to that she was having concerns over, which were 5 middle schools in the East Lehigh area, I started to look at their incident rates and their ethnicities and all that, and their portables, the number of portables that kids have been learning in out there, which by the way is for the better part of 25 or 30 years. And I started realizing we have an issue here. The predominantly white area is getting a brand new $100 million building, while we need a building in East Lee for our most ethnic population. East Lee is predominantly 50% Hispanic, 25% Black, and 25% white. Whereas in Estero, it's 4% or less Black, and then predominantly white, and then Hispanic. So, so our pleas, along with Mrs. Gittens, started to fall on deaf ears. Well, they did fall on deaf ears. And so basically we authored a letter to the Office of Civil Rights. And within 2 weeks of sending that letter to the Office of Civil Rights, they halted the building of Estero.
Right.
Now, I'm just saying, maybe Estero does need a building, but let's do a forensic audit. Because if they don't need a building, we certainly should not have put $100,000 into that building when we have a high incident rates in our most ethnic population and the population that is getting low achievement scores. So on one hand, what I'm saying is I don't agree with CRT, but I absolutely agree with looking out for every single child, regardless of his or her ethnicity. And that was just something that to me was flat out wrong.
I totally agree. And in speaking of Miss Gittens, I have a few things that I totally agree with Gwen on. I have a few things that I don't agree with Gwen on. And the one thing that really bothers me is Gwen runs a lot off of the oppressed, okay? I understand that people's been oppressed, but not only are they Black children, Hispanic children, there are poor white children that are oppressed. But we don't point out the poor white children that are oppressed. We point out, like you said, the only ones that's, in their opinion, oppressed is the poor children of other ethnicities. Mm-hmm. And I don't agree with that. If you look, I grew up here. My family, however, is Appalachian and grew up Appalachian poor. And so I know what it's like to see a poor white child. I know what it's like to see a poor Black child and a poor Hispanic child. Most of the people that I work with are Hispanic or Haitian. And I cannot help but feel like that you said that we need to equally go across this and not keep preaching, oh, we're oppressed. We need to do something about making the whole system work for all children.
Fair.
All children.
Right.
And quit crying oppressed. And look, when my very first banner I ever put out, and I was going to save this for hopefully if Gwen decided to go on camera with me, is as long as racism will never end as long as it's profitable.
That's a good point. Once again, a political agenda, right?
And who do you see jump up? You see people come jumping in from the NAACP, which started out as a good thing. The NAACP, when it started out, was a good thing. Now that's become political. It's become nothing more than a bullying tactic or an extortion tactic, in my opinion, to get across what they want for their own agenda and forget about everybody else's agenda.
Right.
I do believe that there's a lot of organizations that are trying to do good, but I think that you cannot have an organization that's strictly for one group and that be okay. I don't agree. That has nowhere. I don't see nowhere that should be allowed in our school system.
You know, Joe, obviously I have my own personal opinions, my own political opinions, but where it has always come, but in general, with regard to schools and children, I'm about children.
Right.
And I'm about all children. And as I said before, you know, I always left my politics at the door. There are things that I think that are appropriate about what the schools are doing and things that I think are inappropriate. And I think that the inappropriate things that they're doing are driven by politics.
I agree.
And I think that absolutely, it has to stop. It must stop, you know. And that's why a lot of parents have gone to charter schools and homeschooling. You know, I'm still holding out hope for educational reform, you know, for public school reform. There was something else that you said too. I just trying to remember. I'm trying to think about this. You know, I don't really want to talk too much about other board members. I happen to have a very good relationship with Gwen. We speak often. We speak honest. I will tell you that. It's honest conversations. But you know, that's kind of like, that's a sidebar. I know what I was going to say. However, she was asking for those numbers for 2 years. 2 years. And you know, she was told by the former superintendent to quote unquote stay in her lane. Yeah. You know, that is an inappropriate comment to make to somebody. And then to be trying to get information for 2 years so that you can look after the people that are in your district, that's not okay either. You know, so I'm just trying to, you know, weigh that whole thing. But
and you're talking about the superintendent deal. No, we know that we've come up now. They've narrowed it down to 5 people that they're going to look at as the future superintendent. I disagree with this whole situation. I think that it ought to be, the people should have a right to vet and vote on who is the superintendent. I think that it should be an elected position. I don't think it ought to be decided by, and it definitely during an election time, I don't think nobody should make a decision on who's coming in as the new superintendent currently.
Well, and one of the things that I think, one of the messages that I think that you're really getting at is that people don't have faith in their school board.
Nobody has faith in their school board.
And therefore they don't have faith that they're going to choose a superintendent that is really going to do what he or she needs to do. And that's unfortunate. You know, once again, my paradigm was that the Board of Education selected the superintendent, but I worked with board members that were very accountable and very transparent and cared about all children. And so my paradigm was that it worked to have the Board of Education selecting the superintendent. In this case, I have to agree with you because there are just other things that are concerning. And if we didn't have those things that are, like, I'll give you another example, term limits. Let's talk about term limits. So I worked with board members that were literally on the board for 25 years, but they were really super board members. And the really great thing was they had all of this historical knowledge that when we administrators would come and go, they had that knowledge, and they had that knowledge for us, and they had that knowledge for future board members. So they were able to mentor them. But the system worked because the people had integrity. You see, if people had integrity, we wouldn't be looking to change something. We're looking to change something because we've all had it with what's been handed to us, and we just want it to change. We have to be careful sometimes about that, because when we change something, there are going to be, equal and opposite reactions to that as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but in any case, I do agree that I don't think that this is an appropriate time to be selecting a superintendent.
Absolutely.
We are, this is an election year. There are 4 seats that are up on the board. There are people that are actively pursuing those seats. So that could change a lot of things where a superintendent is concerned. I've also heard that there's going to be a referendum on the ballot where people are going to have the opportunity to vote to say whether or not they want to be able to elect the superintendent. So seriously, what are we going to do? Hire a superintendent that starts July 1st, say for example, and then come November 8th, after the election is over, this person is no longer going to be in the position. Or the people that are on the board are going to change and be dissatisfied with this person. It just seems like they're putting the cart before the horse on this, and that they ought to slow down and just, leave things be until we have answers as to how we need to move forward.
With the previous superintendent, he stepped down, and he stepped down, and everybody knows he only stepped down because he knows he's got caught, and he's cost the school board. He's cost the taxpayers millions, and that is continually growing. The ongoing lawsuits against the school board is just
it's mind-boggling.
Yes, and I want to bring this up. I noticed when you was on Tara's show the other day, somebody kept making a comment about you being endorsed by Alfie Oaks. Okay, that bothers me more than anything. Because that person said that, why would you want to be endorsed by somebody that has threatened teachers? I have never once heard that man threaten a teacher, and I have heard the school board threaten him, and I've seen them do that man wrong. I don't think that look. I probably know way more about that little deal there than I should, but I think that you getting criticized for being endorsed by a local businessman, self-made businessman.
That's right.
I think that's disgusting.
Right. I'm proud to have been endorsed by Alfie Oaks, and I will stand behind Alfie Oaks any day of the week. He is a man of integrity. He is a man of God. He is a man that values children. He's a man that values education. He has given back so much to the community.
More than people know.
Way more than people know. And at his own expense and at his own liability. And I just want to talk about that for a second. So, the whole initiation of the cancellation of his contract started with one particular board member. And I don't want to, myself personally, I don't want to get into that at this point.
If you watch my show, you know who she is.
Yeah. And my big concern is, where was the forethought in that? In other words, if you were just going to go, first of all, everybody knows that the lunches were really, really good for the whole 8 years that he was delivering lunches. And while the rest of the country seems to have this food shortage, there's this supply and demand issue. How come there's no supply and demand issue with regard to what Oaks is able to produce? Okay. So now, literally, and I know the other day they tried to deny it during a board meeting, but kids have sent us pictures of produce that was slimy, of food that was moldy, of chicken nuggets that were frozen, limited amounts of food. This is just not a good situation. They hired a company that could not fulfill the contract adequately. In my estimation, that just lacked thought. The whole thing lacked an appropriate thought process. So now the company that they hired, US Foods, who cannot meet the demands, tells the school district that as of January, which we're in January, that they are canceling their contract with the district. And what does the district do? They decide to spend $35 million on refrigeration instead of settling the Oaks contract.
But what people don't understand, if you don't understand refrigeration, is not just about having refrigeration. There's more to that. Because if you have a problem with refrigeration, you got to have somebody 24/7 that knows how to handle it. Because if look, it's happened at establishments where something's broke and they've had to evacuate the whole place. But now you're going to add an additional cost on top of that, because somebody's going to have to be. You're going to have a company that's on maintaining.
And then, so if there's a refrigeration center, then you're going to need truckers. Truckers are going to need to distribute. So you're going to need to hire, or you're going to need to outsource. Then you're going to need workers' compensation. You're going to need unemployment. You're going to need insurance. I mean, this is like a Band-Aid on a gashing wound. And and I don't even blame the people that are working in the district, whose job it became to figure out how they were going to handle this. The board should have never made the decision in the first place.
Absolutely not. And that being said, if you looked at, and I've looked through the contract, I've looked through the lawsuits, I've looked through it all. They did not. There was inside that contract, there was a remedy clause. They never even offered the Oaks Farms Company anything to do with the remedy clause. They could, not that I would have think anything would have changed, because I do honestly believe that what Mr. Oaks said was accurate. They denied him his contract because they was worried about what activists and protesters was going to do out in front of the school board during an election time.
And who's suffering?
Our children.
Our children.
Our children suffer.
Right. Our children are suffering.
And realistically, I talked to someone and they said, look, there's better food at the stockade than what is getting served at the schools currently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, just one or two other points that I want to make, and that is that, I was a special education teacher, and I just want to say how much I value those administrators and teachers and counselors and support staff members that are on the front lines. I was responsible for hiring. These people are assets to the district. The district has got to start working with a line item budget so that the community members know where the money is going, so that we can put the proper professional development into our staff, so that we can have the buildings state of the art. This is a global picture here. This is a global picture about what really needs to be looked at and possibly changed so that our kids reap the benefits of that.
Here another thing that I'd like to say: when you use the school board as a political tool, mm-hmm. you have totally destroyed all credibility.
That's right.
All your credibility.
Well, and one thing I'll just say about that, for those people that are following very closely, and I hope that they are, there are 4 candidates that are running as a slate right now. And they have been put together by the Republican Executive Committee. And I am not going to criticize the slate that they have put together. I will say, though, that the decision about who to vote for should be left up to the voters. The Republican Executive Committee should not be endorsing anybody in January. This is unprecedented. They should wait until after the primary. They should be holding debates so that people can decide who they think the best candidates are. This is exactly the kind of thing that we have moved away from and been upset about with regard to the 2020 election. In other words, people want fair elections. They want fair elections.
By them trying to endorse before that you get to the primary, they're basically trying to sabotage the average person that's trying to go in and do the right thing, to go in and try to do it the right way. And you know, it seems to me, unless you have $1 million in the bank, or you got a huge constituency that's going to pump money into you, your voice ain't heard.
Right.
And I think that's wrong.
It's wrong.
It's totally wrong.
It is totally wrong. Once again, you know, I decided to do this because I can hit the ground running. I do have the credentials. We don't have time to waste. And I'm just asking the voters to listen to the candidates that are out there. I am definitely supporting Christy DiVigelli because she has 10 years in children's ministry, managing children's ministry. She has been also a parent advocate and a child advocate. She has everything that I've been involved in. We have been doing it together for a long time now, and everything that we've been doing has been to help children's parents in the community.
Look, when Christy DiVigelli first come across my radar, it was with the Power to Parent program. Right. And I was inspired by her when I seen her put that together, and I even contacted her on it. I'm like, I think what you're doing is amazing. And I agree, and I support Christy. I support you. I do not feel like that we're in a place where any big PAC should be going to try to put candidates that we don't even know. I don't know these people. I'm from Florida. I want to know who is going to be overseeing my child's welfare.
Well, I'll tell you what. Invite them on the show.
I've invited them, and you heard me at the last school board. I challenge anybody on the school board to go on the show with me, on camera, live, unscripted.
Right.
Y'all see all I don't script nothing. When I come in, I talk as a common person, because that's what I am. I'm a common person.
Right.
I grew up.
I'm a common person.
I grew up here in Florida. I work in agriculture. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I know.
Right.
But I'm also a parent.
Right.
I'm also a parent that believes that good moral values need to be in place in school. I think that no matter, and look, I'm a Christian, that's my faith. I understand people have other faiths, and that's okay. But however, a good moral outlook on and respect for any child's religion, no matter what
Absolutely.
it is. So to me, I think that you cannot endorse these people until they're properly vetted, and not vetted by
just one organization.
Exactly.
Right.
They need to be vetted by the community.
By the community, absolutely.
And that's really where I'm at with that.
And so what I would like to tell your viewers is I am willing to be vetted by the community anytime. In fact, I welcome that opportunity. My platform is in detail on my website. I'm just going to say what my website is right now. It is, I'll say it a couple of times, so that way if you want to write it down, you can. So it is www.elect, E-L-E-C-T, Denise, D-E-N-I-S-E, Nystrom, Nystrom.com, and I'll do that one more time, maybe a little more quickly. www.elect.Nystrom. That's my website. It has my platform. It has my email address. Feel free to reach out to me. I just want to let you know what I'm all about, and I'm hoping for your support.
And folks, you common people that follow me, you got to understand, we have rested on our laurels, and it's just let everything go because we believe they're educators, they're doing the right thing, they're trying to educate and do the things that we as parents are neglecting to look into. I mean, look, it's real hard. Your kid goes to school all day. It's like a job to that child. They go to school, they come home, they got homework and this and that. And you as a parent, you've worked all day. You've got women, they've got to cook, clean, keep up, get to school, their homework with them and things like that. We need to really have the best available people to do the job that we elect them for. Not just do it because somebody says, well, yeah, I like that person. I'll never be that person. And Denise, Denise and Christy DiVigilio was the first two to ask to go on my show after I challenged any school board member or contender to come on my show. And I applaud them for that. I applaud them for the hard work they've done. Realistically, I can't say enough how much I appreciate
Thank you.
the things that y'all brought out to the public that we probably wouldn't have known without y'all.
Right.
We really wouldn't. And before before I talked to you to do this interview today, me and Miss Jessie was going to go out and we were going to interview parents and just ask them, who runs your school district? And see how many parents could actually tell us. But the fact is, I can tell you right now that I would say a good 50% of people have no clue who is their school board person is.
Or what they stand for.
Exactly.
And it's really, really hard to figure that out because when you're running a school board race, you just don't get the media time that other people get. But this is so critically important to know who is in this race so that you can make a good decision. And once again, I just, I'm looking for your support and I'm here to answer the tough questions and just feel free to contact me. I'll definitely do that. And I want to thank you for the opportunity.
I appreciate Denise for coming on with us on the Cracker Culture Podcast. I do support Denise Nystrom. I also support Christy DiVigilio, who is going to come on the show another time. I encourage you, look into these ladies. These ladies have what I feel is our best interest. The things I stand for is family, God, faith, family, and Florida.
Right.
That's my 3 points. I've always said it, faith, family, and Florida. And if we don't have faith in the people that are taking care of our family, we're ruining Florida. So thank you, please, Denise. Again, I applaud everything you've done. You don't have to do this. Denise don't have to do this. Christy don't have to do this. They're not doing this for, like some people, for prosperity or social uplifting. They're doing it because they actually have a true concern.
Right.
And that is the reason why I am so glad to have had Denise on the show today. I ask you people to please, Florida, if you don't vote, you don't care. You got to get out here and look at what's going on. Get out here and check on these people. And if you don't like something one of them says, contact us. You can contact me personally at Cracker Culture Collections, who is the producer of my show, at crackerculturecollections@gmail.com. You can contact me at Smokin Joe Nation. I want what's best for Florida, and I currently feel that we have not done that. We have some great potential, and Miss Nystrom and Miss DiVigilio are two great potential people that can help us to get what we need back into the fundamentals of raising our children properly.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Smokin
you,
Joe.
Denise.
Thank
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate
Good
it.
luck.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll get to see you again soon on here.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
This is Smokin Joe for the Cracker Culture Podcast. I love you, Florida. Love, peace, and gator grease. We're out.
That's a wrap.
Woo! Good job.